Well, I am really very happy to be here with you. I just came from Cairo yesterday, and I was very much looking forward to see this amazing painting. So I'm not an expert in painting, but by my feeling, it reminds me of some of the very good paintings in Rome. Many of you went to Rome and saw the paintings of the classics, of the old people. So it just gives me the impression of history, revolution, the struggle of people everywhere. In Greece, in Egypt, in Sweden, you see here the similarity between how in Cairo, in Tahrir Square, the regime of Mubarak was killing young men and women. And here a young man being killed by the Egyptian police. And then here you have a Swedish. This was in February 2011. This was some centuries ago. This young man, a Swedish young man, being pulled by the police to be killed as a revolutionary fighting against the system. So we are all in the same boat. We are all fighting, whether we are in Sweden or in Egypt or in any part in the world, in the United States. Maybe you heard about Wall Street movement and how, maybe you heard about that. I was there in New York among the revolutionary men and women, and the police took some of them, exactly like what happened in Egypt and what happened in Sweden and Greece and other countries. So we are living under the same system. We have one word. We do not live in what they say, 3 words. They say, I come from the 3rd word, all that. This is a big lie. We live in one word, dominated by the same corrupt, capitalist, patriarchal, military, racist system. This is the system. Few people up there in the White House and London and Paris, and they have the money, the military power, the nuclear power, they have the media, they have the know-how, and they colonize us and they make us poor, and they create war to take our resources. That's the world we are living in, and that's why we have to fight together. So this painting, in fact, gives this impression that we are fighting as people against the same system. It's very inspiring. And in fact, also there is here the writer called Victoria Ben-Dixon. She lived here and she committed suicide, like Virginia Woolf and Sylvia Plath and many of the women all over the world who are creative, and they commit suicide because they cannot cope. And in fact, Victoria, she used a man name. She couldn't use her name. This was in the 19th century?
Yeah, 19th century.
In 19th century, not far away. So, and she used, because she couldn't use her name as a woman here in Sweden. And they oppressed her, and she suffered to the point that she committed suicide. And you can see her picture there. And she is pointing up there to me. And in fact, we have almost the same life. But I will never commit suicide. I am a psychiatrist, and I studied how we behave. I am very much against killing ourselves. We should kill others, but not kill ourselves. Usually I say that, because there are many women, especially women, who tend to kill themselves because they are oppressed. No, it's better. Why should you kill yourself? Either you fight back, you fight and use the same weapon, and conquer the person who conquer you. It's a struggle. So why should we be the weak part who commits suicide? So I am against committing suicide. I am against killing also, killing others. But if there is no way, if people are attacking me and killing me, should I give them a flower? No, I have to use the same weapon. So anyway, we can discuss that. But Victoria killed herself because of the oppression. And still now, the oppression of women is becoming greater in some countries. I don't know about Sweden, but in Egypt, after the revolution, after women were killed in the revolution in Tahrir Square, now there is a backlash against women because we have now the Muslim Brother rule funded by the United States. We should not separate between revival of religious fundamentalist movements in the world, whether Islamic or Christian or Jewish, and the big super capitalist power of the United States. We shouldn't separate, because I listen when I come to Europe or to the States, people always accuse Islam and say, oh, women, you are oppressed because of Islam. As if women in Christianity or Judaism are better off. No. Women are oppressed in all religions. They are inferior, they are oppressed. And whenever you have a religious rule, women are oppressed. That's why we need secular rule. We need secularism to separate between religion and state. But if we have a religious state, like a Jewish state or Christian state or Islamic state, women are oppressed. So we have to fight back. So now in Egypt, we have the Muslim Brothers rule funded by the United States. That's colonialism, American colonialism. And we have to fight back. And women are fighting back. If you come to Egypt now, women are organizing, women are fighting back with men. We established in Tahrir Square what we call the Egyptian Women Union. And 50% of them are young men with us. It's not only we, young men fighting with us against the government in Egypt, against the people who are oppressing men and women and the poor. Also, I do not separate between oppression of women and oppression of the poor, because we live in a class patriarchal system. We live in a capitalist patriarchal system. There is no separation between class oppression, gender oppression, religious oppression, and racial oppression. It's a very complex oppression, and women are at the bottom of the society, especially poor women. Those are the people who suffer. In fact, I would like to talk a lot, but I promise that I will be very brief, and then we will have a dialogue. I think, Johan, you will come to the floor, we will have, if you bring a chair.
Let's see if we can find a chair somewhere. I think these are connected to each other. Oh, here's one. Great. Thank you. Let's get this up here.
Would you like to come here?
This is fine.
This is fine? Okay, so we go back. Okay, great.
Oh, finally, I get to see the audience.
So now we will start a dialogue with Johan, we say Johan, and with you. We need to discuss, because my first question was to Johan, why he risked his life. He could have been shot in Tahrir Square, because when he came to my home in Cairo, people were killed in Tahrir Square. And I found him from Sweden. I told him, why a Swedish painter, artist, come to Cairo in this dangerous area? Come, why? So maybe he can tell us, why did he go to Cairo? What motivated him? What's the relationship between creativity and taking a risk. Because I think creativity is based on taking risks. When you are ready to take a risk, when you are ready to pay your life for your work, for your creative work, you gain it. Usually we say when you risk your life, you gain your life. When you risk anything, you gain. So why did you risk your life? Maybe you tell us.
Well, Nawal, when I was thinking about this painting, as I told you, I wanted to make a painting that was relevant not only for this town in Sweden, but in a general sense. And I wanted a challenge. And if you want to make a painting like this, I think that challenge is very important. To paint history is not necessarily a challenge, but to make an historic painting politically relevant is a great challenge. And instead of just referring to what I've read in the newspapers or what I've seen on TV, I wanted to go to Cairo to be where the revolution in Egypt was taking place. And since I wanted a contemporary colleague to Victoria Benedictsson, who is the main character here, and who is the symbol for democracy, feminism, the artist's right to be creative against oppression, I wanted to have a modern colleague of her to symbolize this fight. And that choice was you, Nawal. And so that in itself was a great challenge. And how to mix history and contemporary movements politically and artistically. And so that was the reason. And I thought it was worth taking the risk.
Very good. Okay. Anybody who would like to comment on this, because we will go and shift to another point. Taking risks, the relationship between creativity and taking a risk. Maybe you can give us example from your life. Because I found the life here in Sweden very calm. People are very pacific. I am a very aggressive person, you know. I am aggressive, not in a mean. I am peaceful with the peaceful, but I'm aggressive with the aggressive. What about you? Anybody who can tell us?
Vill du ställa någon fråga till Nawal?
Jag har en mikrofon här också så man kan prata i så det hörs. Så det är okej att ställa frågan på svenska. We will translate if they want to ask in Swedish.
I don't understand Swedish.
A little bit of English.
Okay. She's speaking in English?
Yes.
Who is speaking?
No, it's only me. I just told them that if you want to ask a question in Swedish, we could translate.
Okay.
So
I'm
just holding the microphone.
Can you come here, because I have, you will be moderating.
I will just...
So you, when somebody have,
yes.
I would like just a little bit to clarify some points. You know, some people think creativity is a gift given to some genius people by God. This is not true. This is a theory. If you are a very good painter or a very good writer or a poet, and people say he is a genius, I don't believe in that. I think we are all born creative. All of us are genius. Everybody here in the room is genius. But we are discouraged to use our genius since childhood. When we are children, our parents, our teachers mock us. When I was a child in school, my teacher gave me 0. And he told me, you are stupid, you are failure, you will never write, what you wrote is nonsense, etc. And if I believed my teacher, I will never be here. But I took his very bad words on me. I went back home because I wrote a story, so he didn't like it. He thought the story is against God, and in fact it was against God. Anyway, so he said how a child who is 10 years can criticize God. And I was a child, and I was criticizing God because I felt God is not just. God is preferring my brother and not me. Anyway, so this is a childish feeling when you are faced with injustice in your home and they prefer your brother just because he's a man or a boy. So I wrote a letter to the first letter in my life was to God. I told him, you have to be just, and if you are not just, I'm not ready to believe in you. So the teacher was threatened, and he said that I am bad, This was in the story I wrote for the teacher. He was the teacher of Arabic literature. So I went home feeling very bad, losing self-confidence, that I cannot write, I am bad, I don't have morals, I don't like God. And I went home and I hid the story away from my father and mother. But to my good luck, my mother cleaned my room and she found the story and she found the bad comment of the teacher. And she came to me and she told me, this teacher, your story is beautiful, and this teacher is stupid, and you shouldn't listen to him. Go ahead and write whatever you feel. And my father read it and said, Nawal, okay, criticize God, criticize me, criticize anybody if you are not convinced. Don't believe in God unless you are convinced. So I regained all my self-confidence. That's why I'm here. So that's why when I tell you everybody here is genius, is creative by nature. We are born creative. But then bad education, bad teachers, bad parents, they oppose us, they discourage us, they take our creativity from us.
May I ask you, Nawal?
Yes.
You were telling the story about when you went to school and how your teacher would discourage you to be creative. Have you followed the development of the modern Egyptian school? Has it improved? Would it be okay for a student, let's say during the last 5 or 6 years of the Mubarak regime, to write the kind of story that you did when you were a child in Egypt?
No.
Today, perhaps,
Worse.
just a hypothetical question, but today would not be possible at all.
Not at all.
I was involving a lot of the school children in Hörby to act the characters from the Tahrir Square, for example, or the Athenian demonstrators, or other historic figures, to incorporate them in history and the political movements today. Would it be possible to do something similar in Egypt with a school today? Is there an open dialogue at all in spite of the regimes? Do you know?
No. In fact, we have the Islamic Muslim Brothers rule now. And what they are doing, they are trying to omit some of the most important teaching. They are omitting philosophy, for instance. You are asking very good question. Just a few days ago, there was a debate in Cairo in the newspapers. How can that Minister of Education, he's a Muslim brother, he say, why should we teach philosophy to children? And he omitted the time. We should give it to other things, to teach religion. You see?
So not to teach philosophy.
Not philosophy, but to teach religion.
And that is the Quran in this case.
Yeah, it means Islam.
And is this official in all the schools now? Has this been...
The debate is going on, the struggle going. Maybe the Minister of Education will fail. But there is a tendency now that philosophy should be omitted. And other things. They omitted feminist leaders in the history of Egypt. They cut some of the biographies, because in some schools, they teach some of the leaders who died, some of the prominent figures in Egyptian history, women who were fighting for education, women for, not me, of course, they will never put me now, but anyway, they were putting women who were very good. They were not revolutionary, but they were for education, for educating women, that women should not marry young, etc. Reform things. And they omitted all that. They said, no, we don't want any women leaders to be in schools. And they are trying to Islamize the programs.
Nawal, you were telling me before that it's important to fight fear and cruelty with cruelty back,
Yeah.
to be persistent. And you were telling me before that many of your young friends today in Egypt are very afraid and disillusioned because of this situation with the Muslim Brotherhoods having kidnapped the revolution. And I know that you don't fear, you are not afraid yourself. Would you just explain to us how come that you are not afraid yourself? Because you told me in a beautiful way before. The young people are afraid, but you are not afraid, Nawal.
Well, we are all afraid, all of us. I don't believe in heroism also. I don't believe in genius, people that are unique and they have a divine gift. I don't believe also in heroism. Everybody here is hero when you have the chance. When you have the chance, when you face death, you have to fight back. So I became strong because I was facing death all the time. People are weak. It's like immunization. If you are not in danger, if your life is not endangered, if you have a very comfortable life, everything comes to you, and you don't fight, you become weak and you are afraid all the time. But when you are exposed all the time to death, to harassment, to everything, to prison, they speak about you every bad thing, everything. They can say you are mad, you are a lesbian, that you are a man-hater. They can say anything you are not, just to pollute your name. And also when you face danger and death, then you fight back. And when you fight back, you develop resistance, immunity. You have immunity against fear and against danger, and suddenly you lose fear. I lost fear of death now. I'm not afraid of death.
During the Mubarak regime, you were a haunted after person.
Since Sadat, not only Mubarak.
Would you tell us, please, the development, because you told me very interesting about Nasser and Sadat, and what happened during the conflict between these two leaders, and what also happened with the development of the Muslim Brotherhood. You gave us a very interesting description of this development and your part of it between Nasser, Sadat, and then Mubarak, etc. Would you please brief the audience here?
Very brief, because it's a long story, you know. And as what you said, you know, history is very important. History of the country, or your history as an individual. Creativity means is to break down the barriers between the past, the present, and the future. Continuous. So when you are creative, you have a memory. Memory also, strong memory, is very much related to creativity. And you have to develop your memory by reading history and reading your own history and learning from your history. That's why I love history. So if I go back to Nasser, Sadat, Mubarak, and the Muslim Brothers, it's one chain, the same regime, with very minute differences. Of course, Nasser was much more promising. He was a military man. He was a military man, and he wanted to diminish the gap between classes. He was not a socialist. He was against, really, he put all communists in prison. But he wanted reform, to diminish the gap between classes, to give the poor some few benefits, etc. He was women in a limited way, that women should work so that if the husband dies, then they can have money and not beg, you know, something like that. Very reformist. But he was much, much better than Sadat. And also, Nasser was against the British and against American colonialism. He wanted Egypt to be independent, which is very important, because women cannot be independent in a country that is not independent. If my country is colonized, I am colonized. It's the same. We are half the society. So Nasser, in fact, helped us in this feeling that Egypt should be independent economically. Women should go to work and have salary, and diminish the gap between classes. When Sadat came, he did the opposite, because he became attached to the United. Also, Nasser was very working on production, that we produce our food, not to import our food from outside. Sadat came and he brought the open door policy. He opened the doors to America. We started to import our bread. Though we are a country that produces wheat, we never imported our bread. We started to import our bread from the US. Ful medammes, maybe you know the ful medammes. You know, in Egypt, it's the national, very cheap food for the poor. We started to import it from California. In fact, we cultivated in Egypt, and then it goes to California, and then they send it back to us in cans with very high prices. And that's why Egypt became poor. 50% of the people in Egypt became poor under Sadat. So we started to be poor under Sadat, colonized, and also Sadat did something very, very dangerous. He brought the Muslim brothers to us with American money. Because the policy, you may be amazed, why the US encourage Islamic fundamentalism? Maybe many of you here say, what's the relationship? What do they benefit from that? But if I can summarize, because it's a long story, usually I use certain things that can illuminate. I say George Bush and bin Laden are twins. So this summarizes. George Bush and bin Laden are twins. The United States of America funded and trained young men from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, Muslims, fanatic Muslims who were against communism, and they trained them and sent them to Afghanistan to fight against communism and the Soviet Union during the 80s. So George Bush and bin Laden are twins. Sadat and Muslim brothers are twins. They work together. And under Mubarak, Mubarak also helped the Muslim brothers. He put some of them in prison, but he allowed some of them to be in the parliament. So they were playing the game all the time. And women were suffering, and the poor. And now we have the Muslim brothers.
Nawal, I think that it's so wonderful to have you here, and you're a fantastic, vibrant, energetic symbol for dissidents and the fight for freedom, and not only for women, but for all of us, and for an artist especially, to meet you and to have had the pleasure to work with you has been so inspiring. And I hope that a lot of people, young people especially, who are taking part of what you have been saying here today, and who gets the pleasure of meeting you, gets inspired and realize the importance of fighting. And that is the goal of the artist. And I feel that you're a wonderful symbol of that.
Thank you. And I think you are a wonderful painter, too.